Hey, everybody, and welcome to the second episode of STARJUMP Fleet Builders. You'll notice that it's got STARJUMP Guardians attached to it. Grim and I both decided that we really wanted to put some wings on the charity side of STARJUMP, and so we are we're using it in every possible way we can that's for the benefit of everyone. We will soon be doing this show live
next episode, I believe, right?
Yeah, you're going to watch this episode on YouTube, and then the next one you're either going to choose. You're going to be on YouTube, or you can catch it on my Twitch, which is twitch.tv/starjump_ender. Let's see. I think
we'll probably pretty heavily promote that as we lead into that first live episode.
Sure.
Expect not sure when everyone's seeing this, but you can definitely expect us to push Fleet Builders on Ender's Twitch channel, on STARJUMP Station, and on our Twitter, and everywhere in between.
Speaking of fleet builds, this week we had a bit of a difficult one. It was let me see here. Sorry, I'm bringing up all information all the time.
It's been a rather busy, honestly, last week or 2 weeks. Just all kinds of stuff happening.
So this one wasn't easy. We had to create a group, 20 Marines, essentially 20 on the ground. You know what? Let me just read it, because if I try to do this, it's a ground strike force.
Actually, before we go into parameters, Ender, could I bring up one other thing here?
Yes, absolutely.
Obviously, people may have seen the new STARJUMP Guardians and the logo now as part of Fleet Builders.
You know what? Yeah.
Do you want to talk about the other new thing people may see in the logo animation?
I do. Thank you. I didn't know if I should do it at the end or if I should do it now, but
let's talk about it now. Get it out of the way now, because you know what?
They've seen it
already. It's important to us, and I know you have been a big proponent of wanting to do something to recognize this particular individual. So let's talk about it.
So, as you guys are potentially aware, as everyone is potentially aware, or if you're not, you're finding out for the first time. I'm sorry to have to give you the news, but the Lisa, a huge supporter for STARJUMP, a gigantic supporter for me as an individual and my wife as an individual as well, passed away a couple of weeks ago. In his period of mourning, Griff, her husband, found some items and started creating something for himself, and he showed it to me, and I asked him if we could use it, and he was gracious enough to allow us to include this. So the heartbeat that you are seeing in our STARJUMP Guardians and in the Fleet Builder in general logo right now, that is actually Lisa's heartbeat from the days leading up to her passing. We thought that it was a fitting place for her to be a permanent part of Guardians, because giving and just a general air of kindness was always a large part of her life, and we wanted to honor that by including that in our logo.
And you can expect that to pop up and in other places we want to also recognize Lisa. So big part of our community, so expect more of that. And I think that just underscores, the whole point of STARJUMP. It's a collective of people. One thing that we are not is we are not like a lot of the other kind of content people out there, content creators, and that we're one person and it's kind of all about branding and marketing ourselves. We are a group of people, and it's that group that really makes STARJUMP what it is. So, people like Lisa, who are such a big part of our community, we need to keep that memory there and keep that memory alive. So you're going to see a lot of stuff like this. It really goes to kind of the heart of what STARJUMP really is. So
100%.
and I want to take my hat off to you, Ender. You've definitely been at the forefront here in STARJUMP of keeping Lisa's memory alive, and definitely wanting to do something to honor her in a cool way, and not just one way. I mean, I think we want to do even other things to kind of spotlight her.
Oh yeah.
But when the time is right, of course. And you've been pretty amazing at kind of leading the vanguard on that, and just wanted to say thanks on behalf of STARJUMP for what you were doing.
Doing my best.
Yeah.
Doing my best. But yeah, that's what we've got going there. And that's what that heartbeat is.
And she would enjoy this show. I know it.
She would. She very much enjoyed theory crafting in general, and just the conversations that it sparked.
So in honor of her, we will break down this week's parameters.
This week's parameters were not easy.
They were not. They were not at all.
So essentially, we were to build a ground strike force. And you know what? Before I continue, I want to properly thank the person who gave us this, Drake, Steel Mary Drake. Thank you,
Steel Mary Drake, one of our longtime like platinum level Patreon supporters. Yeah. So big shout out to Drake.
Huge supporter.
Yeah. Great member of the
community.
They
came up with this amazing idea, and we decided that we would use it this week. So here is the breakdown of what we had to limit ourselves to. We were building for a ground strike force. So we had to have enough drop seats for 20 Marines, at least 4 ground vehicles with additional crew, and medical support extraction. But no more than a total of 50 manpower. This was a weird one for me.
It was very hard.
It wasn't easy.
Just like our last fleet, you're going to see some very, different kind of ways at tackling this problem.
And when because we discussed these ahead of time, before we record, and I don't know if we're even going to get a chance to discuss these ahead of time moving forward. We're going to be seeing them.
It's going to be very
as it goes. It's going to be nuts.
Yeah.
But for now, we've been discussing them a little bit ahead of time, not making any changes to them, but still discussing.
Mm-hmm.
And they were real different between the two of us.
Yeah.
Grim, you thought about some stuff that I was like, I'm just going to trust the system.
Right. Well, and I this one was fun too, from just coming from the Arma 3 days when myself and Ender ran an Arma 3 milsim unit. One of the things I did was a lot of mission building. So I was constantly thinking of, I was thinking of like insertion flows and extraction flows and stuff like that. So it was real fun for me to think about this scenario and this set of parameters using the ships we have to use. But also, there was a lot of ways you could go that could be distracting. And what I mean by that is, like, you could add, the dominoes just keep falling. You could easily add repair ships and this ship and that ship, and suddenly you've built this massive fleet. We really tried to focus on the core tenet of getting troops to the ground safely, and then once they're on the ground, them being able to do their mission on the ground safely. And we tried to keep it to that. And the idea here is that what you're going to see, these two fleet makeups probably would be supported by a larger in-orbit fleet, like a fleet that's in orbit around the planet or moon or whatever, carrying out bigger services, operations, and stuff. So what you're probably going to be looking at here is the group that's going to go from orbit down to the planetary surface.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I got to play with a lot of the fun little dials that were created by Grim U and VMXEO and Starlet. Just the amazing toggles and dials. I've made some stuff a little larger, so not all of my fleet is to scale. Some things may be larger, some things may be smaller. I just made it easier for everyone to see. Grim, I went first last time. It's your turn this time. I want to see
I can
your
go first.
fleet and tell us about your grouping.
Okay. Well, so I tackled this very much from a sort of perspective of redundancy, to be totally honest with you. That was like one of my core tenets that I kept. Obviously, I need to get troops from orbit to the in Atmo safely, and then once those soldiers were on the ground, I needed them to be safe at least to the AO. And obviously, beyond that, things can go a number of different ways. But those are my two goals, and I also wanted some redundancy mixed in because obviously you're dealing with that many people. You're factoring in the complex medical system of Star Citizen, Death of a Spaceman, all that. You're gonna want some redundancy there, right? So, essentially, I broke my kind of fleet up like so. For lack of a better word, I've labeled these two groups here: air to ground 1 and air to ground 2. Now, each one of these has a complement of assets part of it. Okay. Now, let me zoom into my air to ground 1 here. Air to ground 1 is made up of an M2 Hercules. Obviously, it carries a crew of 3, also has 12 jump seats in it. That right away is half of a little bit more than half my Marines. As you know, we have to be able to carry 20 Marines down. So half my Marines could fit right in here. I could actually fit all the Marines if I packed them into the Spartans and loaded that into the Herc. So again, redundancy. Okay. So this Herc will be protected while it's coming through Atmo and onto its landing zone with the air superiority fighter, the F-8C. Lightning, and then once things are being unloaded, troops are on the ground, boots are on the ground, Spartans are rolling out, we have the Ares Ion circling this area, keeping any and all ground threats at bay. Okay, the Ares would be focused on ground targets, F-8C on air targets. So again, all my troops could be in this first ground load, or they could be split amongst the first and second ground air-to-ground unit. This one here is made up of the M2 Hercules as well, only this Hercules would be carrying 2 Nova tanks, both with a crew of 3. This would be, again, accompanying the Spartans full of Marines on their journey to the AO. Once again, we have an F-8C Lightning protecting the Hercules in Atmo, and then we have an Ares Inferno protecting the Hercules and the Novas once they're on the ground. Now, once these ground vehicles here proceed towards the AO, these two ships, these two Ares, could follow and provide additional cover as they're flying, while the F-8Cs stay back to protect the Hercules. Okay, but these two fighters can switch off. If the Hercules decide to head back to home base in orbit, then the F-8C Lightning and the Ares could all be tasked to the ground units. Again, focusing on redundancy. Now going to my smaller units here, just like the previous episode of Fleetbuilders, I added the Vanguard Sentinel because of its E-War capabilities. And while we're not fully aware of what those capabilities will encompass, we've seen early previews of the depth that CIG is putting into radar scanning, radar masking, disruption of those of radar and all that stuff. So I'm hoping the Vanguard Sentinel really holds on to its E-War role and can play battlefield interference, as well as advance like forward reconnaissance, right? So before these Hercules come down, maybe that Vanguard Sentinel's heading down, actively jamming any ballistas in the air or ground to air, SAMs or anything like that that could endanger the Hercules. That's what this Vanguard Sentinel will do. He's got his own small wingman in the Arrow here, just to kind of provide some ancillary support for him. While the Vanguard Sentinel is obviously a heavy fighter, it can't hurt to have someone else out there kind of watching your backside, and that's what the Arrow's role is. Now, Cutlass Steel, this is a bit of controversial choice for even for me. I originally had a Valkyrie in this position. But the one thing I liked about the Steel is it was small. It didn't make a big target profile, especially when you put it amongst all these other ships. You know, if I was scanning on radar as the enemy and I saw Ares in the air and F-8C Lightnings in the air and Hercules M2s, the Cutlass Steel would not be my priority target. So I kind of like the fact that it sort of flew a little bit under the guise of being a ship you shouldn't be concerned with. But its real strength lies in the 18 jump seats that it has, which can carry pretty much 90% of your entire Marine force if needed. It also acts as a quick and easy ground taxi. If troops are actively battled in one area and need a quick pickup to be inserted into another side of the battlefield, the Cutlass series of ships with its VTOL capabilities makes an easy choice in that regard. I did up the crew count to 4. That would be a pilot, turret gunner, as well as 2 side door gunners. So this right here is your Vietnam era Huey landing in the firefight, picking people up. That's what the Cutlass Steel's role in this, build would be. Now, the next ship was a bit of a hard choice, but I went with the Asperia Prowler. Again, with redundancy, not only do we have 12 jump seats in both Hercs, we also have jump seats in the Spartans that can fit inside the Hercs. Again, so a lot of redundancy in how your troops are actually getting down to the ground. Both the Steel and the Prowler are also drop ships, so you can actually split those 20 Marines in a number of different ways, which I really liked. The Prowler could act as that drop ship, though, that the enemy doesn't know about. While this big group is coming down with the primary force, making a big EM signature, the Prowler is coming down behind the enemy in full stealth mode. Something I really liked. As we all know, too, the Prowler can make kind of an annoying little combat ship from time to time that could be rebalanced in the future, of course. But both the Prowler and this Vanguard, as well as this Arrow, could always be tasked to ground close air support along with the F8 and the Ares Ion. Again, redundancy. Yeah. Last but not least, I went with Medical Taxi Cutlass Red. I really thought long and hard about leaning more into medical ships, maybe either a second Cutlass Red or maybe just ditching both of those for an Apollo Medevac. My decision here was, again, kind of relates back to this Cutlass Steel decision. I wanted something that was not a big target, so I went with the Cutlass Red, and I thought to myself, if I was sending 20 Marines down with a host of complement ships, that means we have a pretty big fleet. Okay, just to be able to support this type of ship size, we're dealing with probably, and this is obviously speculative, and I'm taking a little bit of a risk with this, but I can speculate that maybe in orbit is some other big ship, an Idris or Kraken or something. That medical, or maybe it's an Endeavor Hope or what have you. So this Cutlass Red would either medevac people to the medical ships in orbit, or it would take Marines from the front lines to the rear of the lines where my M2s are probably still sitting. And the M2s can then take them up to orbit and take the time to get them up to orbit, deliver them safely to a medical ship, while the Cutlass Red comes immediately back down into the conflict, picking up those that are, casualties and stuff. Mm-hmm. So that's it. I mean, again, I know we like to pick out strengths and weaknesses of our fleets. I think the overall strength of this fleet is its redundancy. Again, I like how you could kind of move the chess pieces around with these ships and get a lot of different outcomes. It's one weakness. I would primarily say the big weakness with this is it's medical. I could also argue that maybe there's no ground to air components to this fleet. Sure. Something like a ballista or a Centurion really weighed heavily on me when I was building this. But ultimately, with that many ground soldiers being in direct conflict, I think the weakest part of this fleet would have to be the single medical taxi. So yeah, that is my fleet. That comes in, if you count the 20 Marines and then count up the max crew count of all these ships, you come up with a straight 50 on the crew count, or the personnel count, which was part of the parameters. So there it is.
I would actually argue that if worst came to worst, um, your cutlass steel, or even the prowler could be could double as a medical taxi. You
Mm-hmm,
just throw
mm-hmm.
a couple of people from,
That's a good
the
point.
Endeavor up in the air, in there, and they are performing medical just like they did in Vietnam, in a
Mm-hmm.
Huey. There are people whose lives were saved or lost in
Yeah,
a Huey,
yeah,
during that triage medical. So,
that's a good point.
um,
And going to that a little bit, what you just said reminded me a little bit. When I first built this fleet, I actually had one Liberator.
mhm,
And the more I got to thinking about that, I got to thinking, I said, if the Liberator was to take catastrophic damage while it was inserting those troops, they can't get off planet now. And one
yeah,
thing I did like about the two Hercs is it gave me two primary heavy lifters to get everyone back off the planet, even if one of them was destroyed. Now,
yeah,
even if you didn't have two Hercs here, you could still break your troops out into these smaller ships to get them off ground. You would not be
sure,
able to carry the vehicles, of course, and even with
right.
one Herc, you wouldn't be able to carry all these ground vehicles. But again, it came down to that redundancy. I just like that redundancy.
Now, I do like the redundancy of your build, and it made me, when we get into my build, it's given me a little bit of a sad feeling that I didn't give that redundancy. So real quick again, ground strike force. We had to have enough drop seats for 20 Marines, at least 4 ground vehicles, which Grim hit with his 2 Spartans and 2 tanks, and medical support extraction, and no more than 50 manpower. Now, you definitely hit the drop seats for 20 Marines.
Yeah.
I think you have something like 60 drop seats for these
Yeah,
guys.
yeah, yeah. There's a lot of
So
drop seat options. So
they're they're in there like swimwear.
yeah.
I fit it in a little tighter with mine. Um, so with my group, I went a little differently. So the E War is really where I feel like I missed out. Not for the first time. I felt the same exact way last time, when you had your E War in there, and I was
Well,
like, God, I should
it's
have
not a
had that.
capability talked much more about
It's
with
not.
CIG. They did sell the Vanguard as an E warship, but we haven't really heard much more, beyond that.
We haven't, but you would still think that I would have thought about it this time, because last time I was like, God, that was such a good idea. And I'm again this week I'm saying, God, that's such a good idea. I'm more trusted in the system. Look, they have made a plan, and that plan will be perfectly executed without any hiccups, because that's how it goes every single time, right?
Right.
Um, Probably not, but here's hoping. So I did it a little different. I've got my Spartan transport, who will also stick around after he's dropped off those Spartans, for gunship support. Now, my Spartans have 2 uh, extra people in it. They are the drivers of the Spartans themselves. So I've got 3 gunners in my gunship, and then 2 drivers for my Spartans.
Hmm.
I've got my troop transport, a total of 20 troops and 5 people, 1 pilot, 4 gunners. You'll notice that I do have 2 dragonflies here. 4 of my guys are going to hop on there, because these are only going to carry, I think, 16, and we've already got a driver for that. So 4 ground vehicles. 2 of them are dragonflies. I figured they could be kind of that advanced check ahead, maybe a sniper spotter team,
Hmm.
or 2. Um, and then I've got my transport protection. So I've got Scorpiuses, 4 of them, Scorpions,
Yeah,
and
Scorpion.
um, I've got 4 of those bad boys flying around for a total of 8. They're going to be protecting my Spartan transport as it drops in, but
Your
they're also
Hercules.
going to be, yeah, sorry,
Yep.
my Hercules. Thank you.
Gotcha.
But they're also going to be protecting the troop transport and my medical transport. Now, I went with the Apollo Medevac.
Yep. Medivacs.
Grim reminded me, because I had actually forgotten that there was a major difference when they described it initially, and when they sold them initially, between the medevac and the triage. But you'll notice that I've got 3 people on here instead of I think CIG's website says 2.
Mm-hmm.
The reason that I did that is I've got 1 pilot and I want 2 medical personnel on each of those transports, because I want both beds working and I want somebody there to doing triage and getting somebody fixed up as best they can before they get back to the fleet.
Yeah.
If anything goes wrong, you're definitely going to want them there. Finally, I've got my close air support. So I've got my Hercules firing barrages from on high if necessary, but I've also got my close air support. That's going to be my Redeemer, fully kitted out, fully manned, and an Ares, Ion, and Inferno. Now, I think it's funny that both of us have once again gone with this Ares, Inferno, and Ion.
Yeah.
It shows the range that this particular ship can have. And you brought the F8 into this again, which it's a ship that can have a lot of range too.
Yeah.
So I think that providing close air support for those is going to be
yeah, and there's lots of discussions about the Ares right now, but in a air to ground close air support situation, you're going to want that aircraft.
It's definitely something that I'm not going to say no to in a pinch.
Yeah.
I was even mentioning it to you. The Ares line speaks loudly, especially to me, the Inferno, because I love the Inferno.
Yeah.
But a size 7 Gatling firing into an area, that's going to pucker some buttholes.
Yeah.
And if you're on a ground troop group, having that firing in your assistance, it's definitely something you want. I mean, this is the Warthog without being a Warthog.
And it's got a small cross section. It's really thin from the sides. It makes a low target, especially to ground forces shooting up at it and stuff. It's a small target.
It's difficult to hit, and I don't see Sam's tracking this thing too easily. Mm-hmm. The Redeemer, on the other hand, it's going to get tracked pretty easily, but the expectation is that whatever's tracking on the Redeemer is probably getting hit by that Ion and Inferno. Mm-hmm. I went for less redundancy and more... you know what? It's kind of showing again. I'm going more for a little bit of violence of action over the redundancy. Mm-hmm. I'm hitting hard from all angles if I can, because my thought process was these 4 Scorpiuses could also, I'm over here screwing that up. There we go. These 4 Scorpiuses could also be utilized as close air support, because those guns can go back and down, and they can strafe backwards and just do some pretty heavy damage.
Well, there's 2 thoughts I have about this. First one is that while yes, I think there's a heavier kind of violence of action going on with this fleet, you counter that a bit with the quite a bit more medical, facilities. It's having 2 Apollo medevacs. While yes, you're going to have a lot of violence of action, you also now have the medical to support that kind of operation. You know what I mean? I would be concerned, for example, if you had this level of kaboom, but you were only bringing a Cutlass Red. You know what I mean? Now, the other thing I want to point out, and I normally would not consider this, however, being that John Crew pretty bluntly said this is going to happen at some point, the Redeemer has been long talked about getting a dropship module.
Oh, yes.
For its bottom. And also, doesn't it have a couple drop seats in it now?
It does have a few drop seats.
So,
this is a
So
bit of
there's
a redundancy for
so
sure.
there's some redundancy built in there just with the Redeemer having some drop ship capabilities, which I think is kind of nice in a fleet like this. It's a ship that I considered a little bit too. I wish we had more details on its drop ship module, but it
Me
wasn't
too.
when the Redeemer was getting ready to come out to go flight ready. I remember John Crew did make a post stating that that is still very much the plan for this ship to have some modules. So I could see the Redeemer also acting as a like a hot zone pickup ship if it
Yeah,
needs to pick up wounded or
absolutely.
whatever, or retrieve people out of a hot landing zone, someplace that you don't want to take the Apollo.
Yep.
You know, so I like that aspect of it. Obviously,
I
the
do too.
Valkyrie. One great thing about the Valkyrie versus, like, if you look at my fleet, with the two Hercules as two drop ships, and then my only other drop ship options being the Steel and the Prowler. One thing I'm really relying on is either A, using the M2 Hercules to land kind of at the rear, back in the rear. You're
Hmm.
not landing right on the hot zone,
Sure.
which wasn't a parameter, which is why I didn't build
Right.
around that. But my Steel is something you don't want to land probably in a hot zone. It's too fragile. And the Prowler
Yeah.
is more for stealth insertions. So I really need to be inserting troops in the rear and having them proceed on ground with the tanks and the Spartans with close air support.
Right.
One thing the Valkyrie does afford you is more of a hot zone landing. It is built for that, and
That's true.
I think that is a nice bit of flexibility that's just built right into your fleet, is the ability to insert some, because what you could do is you could split your group up as well. You could have
Right.
some of them come in on the Hercules, maybe some of
Right.
them are in the Spartan within the Hercules, but you could have
Yep.
a contingent already in the Valkyrie too. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
your
and
your drop team could be split up a little bit
true. My
if
thought
needed.
process with the Valkyrie was less about the beginning of it, right?
Hmm.
The beginning, and I had a full mission in my head the whole time. Essentially, the Valkyrie drops them off. It's in a relative safe zone. Oddly, the Spartans are getting left behind
Hmm.
in this particular mission unless there's a safe point that the gunships can get picked up. But
Hmm.
that pickup in a potential hot zone is what I was thinking about for the Valkyrie.
Hmm.
And I didn't want it to get destroyed trying to pick up troops, in an emergency situation. Hey, we got
Yeah.
to bug out. Let's get the hell out of here.
Yeah.
Um, I didn't want
Well,
it getting
in
destroyed right away.
terms of, I mean, one great thing about the Valkyrie versus almost all other dropships, and it's kind of like, in my opinion, it's big kind of check mark in its pros column, is that the Valkyrie is really built around hard landings. Like,
Hmm.
so coming in fast, coming in heavy, clamp, you're right on the ground, you're getting fired at. So if you look at the Valkyrie, it's got its big, heavy landing gears. It's got full VTOL capability. So that's a ship that can come in heavy, hard, and fast, land immediately if it's needed. Again, it's you just there is some flexibility in this fleet. And that's what
Yeah.
I like as well.
I like the flexibility. I like the redundancy of your fleet. Again, it's another week then, and it kind of proves. I guess the proof of concept for this particular show. Um, Different fleets are still perfect fleets. Like you've built a really great fleet that if you were to show me a mission where we're going in with that fleet, I'm confident that mission's going through.
Yeah, and
Um,
there's countless what ifs that could make
yep.
either one of these fleets invalid or better than the other. But
Yep.
that's not really the goal because we can't speculate on that. All we can do is come up with ships that could accomplish that mission profile. And there's probably lots of fleets that could accomplish that mission
Yeah.
profile. There's lots of fleets that
Speaking
couldn't.
of lots of fleets that could complete that mission profile,
Mhm.
you guys feel free to share yours with us. We have a
Yes.
Fleet Builders channel in our Discord, discord.gg/StarJump. You'll see the Fleet Builder area in there. Now, keep in mind, guys, we are not trying to min max our ships.
No.
We don't want to minimum run for example, Valkyrie. We want this to be as realistic as possible. Have fun with it and share it away. And we'll discuss the hell out of it with you, and we'll figure it out and really just get down to the nitty gritty on a lot of these ships.
And there's no
the
right or
discussion
wrong.
is the fun part.
Yeah, exactly. There's no right or wrong. And another important fact is it's not a competition. It's just to see what other viewpoints can show us. So look at it like that. And again, remember the going back to Ender's comment. No, we're not min-maxing things. We're not going to Urkel and looking up specific DPS counts, because all that's going to change. Everything is very speculative. The F8C Lightning, who knows where that ship's going to be at when it's flight ready. The Ares Inferno, it may be 5 times better than it is right now. It may be 5 times worse. We just do not know in a lot of these scenarios. The M2 Hercules, what is its big thing that's supposed to make it special? Armor, another thing not in game. So a lot of this is speculative. So what we're trying to do here is look at capability, not min-maxing the numbers. Yep. This was a fun one.
This was a real fun one, and it was difficult. I had to sacrifice. I was going to go more medical transport. I had one more in there, but I didn't have the space for it.
But what I liked about this one, Ender, is I did like that with 20 Marines and 30 others that we had to account for, you really, that's 50 people, and our last fleet was 50, but this one felt more like something that an actual org would employ on a more regular basis than our last one, which was much more of a, where if this is like a dungeon night for an org, this fleet build here, our last one was more of a raid night, something that's not going to happen every night. You know what I mean? That was more of a, you're going to prep a while for that type of operation, where this one felt like something that, you know what, your org could get together in the future when the game is obviously more there, and let's say there's an outpost you want to attack, an org could get together and plan this operation over the course of a few days and launch it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I agree with that. So just a couple of announcements. One, as we said before, this show will be going to live soon, the next episode. But before that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it is the weekend of the, forgive me, the 23rd. I think we're doing it on Sunday, so it would be the 25th.
Right.
STARJUMP Station is coming back, right?
STARJUMP Station's coming back, absolutely, and it's going to be me and Ender as hosts. Starlet is kind of still on her sabbatical. You know, we kind of all were on a little bit of a STARJUMP Station sabbatical. She is going to remain on hers to focus on work and some other things she needs to focus on. As you all know, she pushed really hard to help me get Fleet Viewer out the door, and she, you know, we do get to turn back to real life sometimes. So she is dealing with that. But she's still part of STARJUMP. She is still considered a STARJUMP Station host. You will see her ship in the opening animation, but for the foreseeable future, it will just be me and Ender on there. So we thought changing it to Sunday would help in a few areas, not only for viewership, because Friday is a very competitive night to try to stream anything, but we think it'll be better for a number of reasons. Also, to allow us to digest maybe something that was talked about on Star Citizen Live on Friday or what have you. I can imagine when CitizenCon comes around, I believe CitizenCon's on a Saturday, October 8th, you know, we'll be able to record on Sunday and be able to talk about it. So it'll actually work out really nicely.
Yeah, I agree. So that'll be coming back this week. And then we're going to be alternating weeks, I think, for Station and Fleetbuilders. So you can look for Station on the YouTube, I believe. It'll be streamed Sunday nights, 9:30 Eastern Standard Time on YouTube. And then you can look for Fleetbuilders over on my Twitch at the same time every other Sunday. So and we'll be, you know, doing announcements on Twitter and all that. So make sure you go give our Twitter a follow. Links in the description below. And join our Discord. Links in the description below.
Another great episode. We'll see you everyone on the next Fleetbuilders.
Thanks for hanging out, guys.